welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Hey, you guys, and welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm extra excited today. You guys know I'm always wicked excited. But I'm extra excited today because my beautiful friend, my dear friend, my beloved friend, Meg Haines in the house. I'm so excited. Hi, Megs.
Hey. Hi. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
I'm just playing with you.
I'm wicked happy to play with you too. So, Meg Haines is your professional name, I would say. It's your artist name. It's like
my stage name.
The artist formerly known as Meg Haines, right? Yeah, your stage name, or your the thing that you do your business under. And I know a lot of women in this kind of, and I say situation, but it's not a negative thing, where like for me, like when I married my sweetie, I chose to remain Karen Kenney because I married at like 42 and I'd been Karen Kenney my whole life, right? So I was like, I'm Karen Kenney, like that's the thing. But so you are also known as your, so let's say, and I think you recently adopted your very Italian sounding last name. So
I know. I always wanted to be Italian, so.
I always am like, am I saying it right? So it's Marinaccio?
Yeah, Marinaccio.
That's hard for me to say. So I say everything's Marinaccio. So awesome. So welcome to the show.
Yeah.
And you guys.
Thank you.
I'm going to let Meg tell you a little bit about herself in a sec, but I'm going to read the official bio because I always like to represent my friends properly when I have them on the show. So here we go. Big time bio. So Meg Haines is a spiritual teacher and healer. She's the creator of Divine Feminine Mastery. She's trained under world-respected teachers such as some of my favorite guys, Brian Weiss, John Holland, and also Robert Holden, who's such a sweetie pie. He's really known in the Course in Miracles community too. She's received certifications in coaching and angel therapy and past life regression, Reiki, a bunch of Reiki, and integrated energy therapy amongst a bunch of other modalities, you guys. She's also, which is wicked fun, because I went to BU and she went to Emerson in Boston, and she's a trained dancer and performer and even has a BA in musical theater, which is fantastic and fascinating. And so we'll definitely talk about how dance plays a role in your life too, because I think we both know, as a writer, as a dancer, as fellow creatives, we really have a sweet spot for the creative arts. So we can talk about that too.
Definitely.
Meg is passionate, you guys. I mean, she's passionate about a lot of things. You should see her cat, Wiki. She's wicked passionate about her cat, Wicket, who we call Wiki. He's wicked cute. Meg is passionate about helping women deepen their connection with the divine, honor their soul's calling, trust their body's wisdom, and heal the blocks that are preventing them from fully loving and living so that they can shine and serve in the way that they were always meant to do. You can tell.
You read that so awesome.
Yeah, I know. You're like, when people read your bio and you're like, wow, that person sounds pretty cool. And you're like, hey, that's me. They're talking about me. So welcome to the show. Is there anything you want to say before I start like hammering you with questions?
No, I'm just ready to chat.
Awesome. All right. So childhood story. So tell us a little bit, because the show is all about spirituality and storytelling, and what I'm always fascinated with, and what I always say is that, like, when I use Rocky, the movie Rocky, as an example, and I always say, if Rocky had just stayed in being a collector for the bookie and punching meat in a locker, the story would have been like, the guy's a bum. Like, he's like, I'm just a bum. Like, Mick's like, you're a bum, Rock, right? But all of a sudden, the transformation of the story, when he starts to take himself seriously and starts to see himself as a champ, and then he like runs up the stairs, like he's like doing that whole scene. It's like that was when the story starts to transition from the old story to the glory. And I love that. So this is kind of like what this podcast is about, is people kind of talking about their own journey and how they find themselves, like, you know, where they started and then what they've done with the shit that probably happened, right? So can you just tell us a little bit about like where you grew up, you know, your kind of your family dynamic, you know, brothers, sisters, yes, no, whatever, and then some of your story, and then eventually like how that kind of informs, inspires, influences the work you do today.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up really close to you. Actually, my mom worked in Lawrence, so that was nice. So I grew up in New Hampshire. I was an only child. And I was a very happy-go-lucky, very loving child, like just loved people, was very empathic, deeply sensitive, was very aware of how my family members felt about things, or teachers felt about things. So that, you know, as an empath, as a highly sensitive kid, and I know you know this too, you learn at a young age how to kind of adapt to your surroundings and how to make yourself appear and show up and act in a way that makes others comfortable.
I always say, yeah, it's like what is pleasing to others, like how,
what is pleasing, yes.
Yeah, like how their preference of how you would be and look and speak and behave, right? So I call that the Cirque du Soleil yourself into contorting yourself into some version that they find palatable and pleasurable, right?
Yes. And I would say that my true nature was to be I was a very vivacious, very loud and playful kid. I danced from the time I was 3 on, and was in theater and was singing, and I did sports too, but I just loved performing. I loved making people laugh and making them happy. But with that, it's like there was a time and a place for that. So I always, and being the only kid, you can't fuck it up.
So let's talk about that for a sec. So that, I mean, that's just, I'm married to an only child. Yeah. And I will sometimes say to him, you guys actually went in opposite directions in being only children, in that he is like, because you've said to me, as one of your friends, I know this, and I hope this is okay to share publicly, but because you did not have siblings, your friends became like wicked important to you. They're
100%.
Like your sisters, like your siblings.
Yes.
Where my sweetie, when I say to him, do you ever wish that you had siblings? And he's like, no. Like he was just like all set with it. He's not hyper social, even though he does a very social gig and stuff like that. So I always find this interesting. So that thing that you said, like, well, as an only kid, like you better not fuck it up, right? Like you better not mess it up, because it's like one shot. And it's almost like, so is what you're saying, not to put this on your folks, but was it kind of like there was either this expectation, or like, you're our one shot, like, you know, you're the kid we made, like, don't mess it up, you know? And I want to talk about that. And I also want to speak to when you said, being a really sensitive kid, because where we come from, or at least where I come from, on, you know, East Coast blue collar kid, being sensitive wasn't like the way that we might mean it, which is in tune, empathic. You could feel other people's feelings.
Yes.
For all the woo-woo ways to talk about it. Vibrationally, you could tell if somebody else was angry, scared, whatever. Just really, a lot of times it's like, stop being so sensitive. Meaning you're being a baby, you cry too easily, right? So I just want
the favorite was Get Off the Stage, Sarah Bernhardt. That was
because you were being dramatic. You mean your emotions just came across as being dramatic?
I just had emotions, and I was very open with my emotions when my parents were not. So it came across as dramatic because they weren't both individuals. And I love my parents so much; they're amazing humans. But they grew up and in the same kind of way of, you don't you keep it to yourself, you put a
Yes.
smile on your face, you work hard. And so me being a very emotionally expressive kid was, I think, in some ways threatening for them. And so I would always be told, you know, be a good girl, do as you're told, mind your manners, always say thank you, don't misbehave. Like, so there were all of these
parameters.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I felt like the edges that I could dance in were very tiny. And
Okay.
yeah,
No, go ahead. I just got excited. So that's like me, like my environment, the way that I dealt with it is I was literally, I'm not just saying this I was literally the kid who never colored outside the lines.
yeah,
I wanted it to be perfect.
same.
And and I just never wanted, but here's the thing, like, and I'm really being, I want to speak to this, and I'm not saying this, I want to be very clear, I'm not saying this in a negative way. But when you said I had really big emotions, I heard a voice in my head go, of course you did, because you're a theater kid. Like musical
Yeah.
theater kids, they're always like jazz hands, right? It's like, hello, baby, hello. And you're just kind of born that way. And I think I think the true theater kids, like they came through that way. And I think that need to be expressive. And the dance kids, and use your body and be big. Like I use words, right? I like words on a page, right? And it's like with dances and theater singer kids, like it's very like big. And I guarantee most of the, like, I think the expressive or highly emotional, whatever children, I think I was highly emotional, but it wasn't safe. So it was a different kind of thing. I was very internal, right? And it sounds like they kind of put a cap on that too. But I guarantee it's on some level, it was like the experience for other people was, and especially your parents. And weren't your parents a little bit older when they had you, or your dad was?
Yeah, they were both. My mom was 35 when she had me, and my dad was a couple years older. So I was, they were older. They weren't.
I wasn't being raised by a 20-year-old like I was, right?
Right.
Like, yeah. A little bit different.
Exactly.
But so I was going to say the phrase was probably on some level that you were too much. Did you get told you were too much?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. And it's, and look, like we say all this and knowing very well that our parents are always doing the best that they can. And my parents were so loving and encouraging of my big theater-ness.
Oh my God, they love you to pieces.
And my dancing. But in everyday life, they really wanted to rein it in. And
so what was the effect of that, do you think?
Well, a couple things. I mean, first, when you are an empath, you are feeling other people's emotions and experiences. Well, there's different kinds of empaths, but I felt other people's emotions and experiences in my body. So if someone was angry with me, that was very threatening because I could feel that anger like coursing through my body. And so back to the Cirque du Soleil, that is why I always made sure I was a good girl, because any emotion outside of that could have been anger or rage or disappointment or shame or that was very threatening to my physical system and emotionally. So I really tried to avoid any situations that would activate any sort of or elicit any sort of response from someone else, because it was a way that I kept myself safe.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I find this fascinating. And if you want to, we can dip our toes into, or at least name the different kind of empaths. And I think when you say that, it means the way that people are empathic, the way that they experience whatever it's just like kind of like how certain psychics, some get visions, some hear noises, some hold objects, right? There's different ways, I think, of interpreting or experiencing outside energy, or you know what I'm saying? So I think that's what you mean.
All empaths are sensitive to energy. They're sensitive to the energy around them. Some people are more in tune with animals, some people are more in tune with their environment. So some it's a combination. For me, it's very much I feel other people's feelings in my body.
Yeah, so like how our friend Meg Shea is an animal communicator, like she can really pick up on the vibes of animals. Yeah. So shout out to Meg.
Hey Meg.
One of the things that you said that I wanted to dive a little deeper on is that you were saying that your nervous system like could not handle when it would feel. And I think that's what you meant. You said my physical system, right? So like your nervous system. And for those of you who might be new to some of this information, like, you know, your nervous system, like especially like your adrenals like pump out all of these stress hormones. It's kind of the things that we relate to when they talk about being in fight or flight or freeze mode.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's almost like you feel like you get a little short circuited. It's just like, like it feels like a real threat in your own body, and it can just like knock you on your ass. You get totally fatigued or overwhelmed, like whatever, just for people who are listening. But when you were saying that it was too much for your system to experience other people's like anger or dissatisfaction with you, whatever. Here's what I would like to know. Did that feeling of like that intense feeling where you kind of were like, I don't like this, so I'm going to behave super good so I don't have to experience their dissatisfaction or anger or upset. Did that also though then keep you from being comfortable with expressing or feeling or experiencing your own anger and your own rage? So did you like just suppress everything and then because here's what I know. When we do that as children, and especially as a writer and as a spiritual mentor, where a lot of the people who are attracted to me are also word lovers and stuff like that. And they often say to me, I want to find my voice, right? So I'm wondering if the use of your own voice in that situation got affected.
Oh, for sure. And I would say that my voice is something that I do a really good job of expressing emotion or any sort of difficult conversation that I want to have, either through writing, because that is a way that I can channel that, or through movement. So dance literally saved me for so many years. I would just go into my room and I would dance and put on, you know, rage music and just like work it out in my bedroom, just thinking I'm being, you know, just choreographing a piece. But really I was giving myself therapy because I had no one guiding me through those emotions, because especially emotions like anger, rage, like grief, those were definitely not observed in my house. Yes. And no one could guide me through that because they hadn't allowed themselves to move through that.
Sure.
So that kind of leads to the next part of the journey, where life is great, grand, wonderful. You know, for the most part, like some challenges here and there. And then everyone in my life started to get sick. Essentially, my dad was diagnosed with leukemia and had just a crazy percentage of survival.
Wait, so how old were you when that diagnosis came in?
That came in, I think I was in the 4th grade.
So you're about like, let's see, 4th grade.
9. Yeah. So 9-ish. And he didn't get a bone marrow transplant until it was a couple days before. It was crazy. It was actually I did the first show I've ever done. And I was the lead role. I was so excited. I was just so happy. And then the next day he went in for his transplant. So we saw the show.
How old were you when he got the transplant?
13.
So, I mean, that's like a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Like 6 years.
Yeah. And meanwhile, during that time, my babysitter, who really just was like another mom to me. I grew up with her family while my mom and dad went to work. She was also diagnosed with cancer, and she passed away the next year. My grandparents, who lived with us, like they had their own house attached to ours, but they were always dealing with health challenges. They both had cancer. It was kind of like, they're going to die. No, they're not. They're fine. They're going to die. No, they're not.
There was a lot of threat of death in your household.
There was, and I was living with that all the time, kind of looking at everybody going, are we not seeing the elephants in the room? Like, this is really intense. Are we not acknowledging it? And it was just kind of like business as usual, put on a face, like, let's march on as if nothing's happening. Yes. And I was seeing all of this go on and feeling all of this go on. And it literally became too much, where all of those emotions backed up. Literally, my body and everybody's body is so wise and so brilliant in the way that tries to teach you or bring to light things that it's inviting you to heal and work through.
Yes.
And my freshman year of high school, I didn't finish. I finished at home, but I didn't finish with my classmates. I was out probably the last 2 months. They thought I had migraine, so they diagnosed me with that. Come to find out, I had acute sinusitis, where all of the sinus cavities were completely blocked and pushing against my skull. So talk about being stuffed up with emotions.
Yes.
And not being able to process that. And then also they think I had mono at that time. So like the deep fatigue of working through that. And so I was just trying to work through that. And then the anger hit. Because I was like, okay, this is fucked up. Like, this
well,
is
that's
really
just it. I mean, imagine it too. Like, even if
Yeah.
you had a sibling, and like, don't get me wrong, siblings can be a pain in the ass. But even my sister and I, who like, you know, we will always love each other, but we are different, right? But if you put us in a room with other people, we can look across the room and know what the other one is thinking. So you
Right.
didn't have another sibling, whether they were a pain in the ass or not, to even just kind of be like, are we really
I'm
not going to
alone.
talk about the fact that so-and-so's dying, or like dad's got leukemia, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, so there was no real outlet for you other than, like, as you're saying, like dance and creativity and trying to process it. But it wasn't enough. Like, you needed to be able to talk about these things, and then your body just starts to do what it's just like, hey,
let's deal with this.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? And so, you know, a lot of, and this happens to, it's not a female exclusive way of handling things, but I think a lot of women tend to do this, is that if you don't work through your rage and your anger externally,
yes,
in some way, it goes internal.
yes,
And I, of course, you know, didn't want to put that on anybody, but it was really intense. And I found cutting as a way to release the anger and a way to feel the physical pain that I was feeling emotionally.
It's so yeah. So can I ask you a few questions about that?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because so I think it can be really misunderstood, right? So the way that
Definitely.
it is often portrayed in TV shows, I always say the after school specials, right? The TV shows, like whatever, and they'll just do a quick flash to somebody's arm or thighs or belly, whatever, and there'll just be all these little lines like scars and stuff like that. And people can often get confused, like, oh, is somebody trying to beyond harm themselves? Like, is cutting because they want to kill themselves? Is cutting because some people, like, I was just so numb, I wanted to feel something. You're saying it from, like, I had so many feelings. So can you just talk a little bit of, and I'm not saying you're a cutting expert, but you are in your own experience, right? You are in your own experience. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. I feel like what happened is when I get to a place where the emotions were too intense, I always did it in the shower, because that was just a very private place for me. And water is very soothing. So it was like the emotions would get to a peak. I would retreat there, and I would cut, and that would be the release for me. So, because I couldn't even scream, I couldn't vocalize anything. So this was just like the only way that I could have that release from the pent up emotional buildup that was
and
surface.
So when you say cutting, and again, not to be graphic or whatever, but I imagine there might be somebody listening at home who has a niece or a kid or somebody they love who does this behavior. And the way that I've come to understand it through the many people that I've known who have had this, and I just call it, like, you know, to me, it's a survival tool, even though it's not probably the most helpful, right? Or, you know, kind.
It was the only one I had at the time.
Exactly. But so sometimes they'll do it with razors, sometimes they'll do it with something sharp. And it's basically you cut, and I'm trying to understand it because I haven't done it, so I don't want to misrepresent it in my own language. So you cut so you bleed, but is it really about just feeling the pain, or is it more about like, so what psychologically, like for you, like was the what it was for you?
So it was a couple things, and I never touched an area that, you know, like I never went near my wrists. It was always my thighs, always a place where people aren't going to see. There's a lot more there. And it was not in any way to kill myself or, you know, do serious harm. It was just to have a release. And that was my experience, which can be very different from someone else doing that as well. Yeah. But I think it was a lot of things. I mean, it was the emotional release for sure. And then there was something just about, and not to be graphic about this. And I also want to be very mindful of not romanticizing it.
I want it to be honest. And it's not, again, it's not to be dramatic or graphic, but it's truthful. It's honest.
Right. Well, I think there was something just about seeing my own blood.
Yes.
That made me go, okay, I'm still here. I'm here. I'm still alive, because there was a part of me that was feeling very disconnected from my own body and from my own life and from my own experience. So while it's kind of weird because you have this, you're feeling everything, and at the same time you're numb. And I don't know how to put that any other way, but it's like, and then there's nowhere for any of it to go.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think of it like, and I'm not a psychoanalyst or a therapist, but the way that I feel like it is that, you know, cutting, you could replace the word cutting with, drinking, booze, porn, like whatever. And what it is like, I think there's such an overwhelm of emotion, and it's in some cases, people are looking for ways to numb. And other times people feel so overwhelmed and full of emotion that the whatever you want to call it, the internal built-in protection systems kind of like shut everything down. It's like, I feel nothing. And like, you want to, it's so interesting, right? Like this thing of like, I feel everything, but I feel nothing, and I want to feel something, but it's like, I don't want to feel what I was fucking feeling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to feel something else. I want to feel alive. And I think that it's like, I just think so often, like through my own suffering, it's made me so, I think, much more sensitive, aware, alert, whatever the word is, mindful of other people's suffering. When I think of people, you know, cutting, I always just think like, man, I wish I could have. I just want to like hug people. You know what I mean? I just think all the time, like, I just think like the ways that our younger versions were trying to work out how to survive and how to get love. Yeah. You know, we're really creative though, aren't we? It's like we will, because some of those things, in a way, like I think back to my own survival mechanisms, they work. So I do a whole process with my clients called the shield around this. And it's like, they work until they don't work. Right. So at what point did it stop? Like, did it come to your awareness, like, okay, this isn't the answer? Yeah. Well, when I got found out and brought to the guidance counselor, and did one of your friends rat you out? He actually pulled me out of class. Yeah, a girl ratted me out. And I got pulled out of class, and I thought I was in trouble. I thought I was either in trouble or someone died. And he was like, no one died and you're not in trouble. And I was like, well, why am I? Like, there's something up here. And I remember him bringing me into the office and explaining it to me and saying, we're going to have to call your mother. And I was like, no, absolutely, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. Absolutely, you cannot. And he was like, I don't have a choice. I'm going to have to do that. And I was like, no. They have so much stress going on. Like, I cannot be another burden. Like, she does not need this right now. Like, I just went into protective mode of, I was just trying to process my own shit. I'm not trying to add shit to my parents' shit. I mean, you know what I mean? I was just like so self-aware of like this can harm that, or she's going to take it as she didn't,
love me enough. She's going to take it very personal. And that's not what this was. This was just me trying to work out the intense emotions of everything I'm feeling. But he did call her because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, he had to. I mean, he literally had to, right?
And my mom, like my parents were just, of course, so loving, so supportive, just wanted me to be well. And so the recommendation was that I go to therapy.
Oh.
And I went through a few of them.
Yeah. I have my own story of teenage therapist. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I really thought I was in a movie and a couple. I was like, wow, this like really happens. Okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah. Well, so let's just take a moment, and you don't have to say her name. Did you know who ratted you out? Did you find out who the, we say rat, but let's call it what it was. And this is what I wanted to acknowledge it and say,
she gave me a gift.
I'm assuming she was somebody who cared about you and did it out of love, and it's so funny because, we have 4 little dogs. And the other day, Peanut, the littlest of the littles, like, I don't know what he saw, turkey, squirrel, who friggin' knows, but he was going ballistic downstairs. And so I'm going to make my point in a second. And I was like, Peanut, what's happening? Did you see something? And and my sweetie was in the shower, so I couldn't even enjoy the joke. I had to make myself laugh. And I started yelling, Peanut, see something, say something, see something, say something. And I just started yelling. That's what that girl did. Like, she saw something, and kudos to her for having the courage. Because she probably knew that she was risking, like, especially if it wasn't common knowledge, like, you could probably go, well, it's 1 of 3 people or whatever who ratted me out or whatever. Right. Yeah. But kudos to that brave young woman.
Yeah, no, I'm always grateful for her for that experience. And because it was like, if she hadn't done that, I don't know where I would be. I mean, I trust that I would have found my path because we're always being guided on our way. But I that was really a turning point moment for me. And just wanting to, I recognized that was a coping strategy that I used to move through what I was experiencing. But I wanted tools. I wanted to actually heal this. And what's really crazy, Karen, is like, I was thinking about this the other day about how this moment has now come full circle for me, because here we are in this global crisis where people are losing people that they love.
Yes.
And that was ultimately I had all of this emotion that I was processing, but also there was deep fear under all that of what happens to the people that I love if they all leave me, if they all die, and where do we go? Is it just curtains? Is it just like dirt?
Well, let me ask you that. So did your family have, because I kind of think, like, I often laugh and say, if you would have told younger me from Lawrence, oh, you're going to be a yoga teacher, oh, you're going to be a spiritual teacher, like, I would have laughed in your face, right? And even though I was raised a Catholic kid and God was a concept, that I understood and so that was my question for you. So this concept of, like, because as Catholic kids, we were told that there's an afterlife, but you better pass the fucking test, right? It was like so conditional. Like, it also, so it's not like when you're saying, is it just curtains? Here's what I find interesting about that. You kind of, like me, it sounds like, weren't just chugging the Catholic kid Kool-Aid, right? Because there was a lot of things that, like, didn't kind of make sense for me. Like, and I tell these stories, like, in the memoir, but it's like, so for you, when you're like, so is it just dirt? Is it curtains? So even though you were, that was my question to you. Did you come from a religious or spiritually minded or faith background household? And so,
I was raised Catholic. I went to church every weekend without fail. And I was sinning in the church. Like, when I was little, I was just playing, and then afterwards I was just daydreaming about boys that I had crushes on. Like, I wasn't actually. Like, so, but I remember in CCD, or no, not CCD. I remember in CCD, asking a question to my teacher and saying, I have a question. She said, yes, Megan. And I said, if God loves us unconditionally, why would he punish us for our sins? I got no response, and I was told to get a box of animal crackers.
Dude, I'm telling you, right?
I was like, I don't understand this. And I also felt a connection to God, but it was when I was in nature, when I was with my grandfather. It was like I didn't find it there. I didn't experience it there. And I know some people do have an experience of it in a church or in a community of sorts. I did not experience it there. So for me, there was not enough. I didn't have as faith-based as I am now. Like, I'm very spiritual, but I also need proof. I need proof.
We're alike in that way. Yes.
I'm not going to blindly follow. Like, I need proof and I need evidence. And all of this led me to this woman who worked with crystals and had oils. And I was like, great, sign me up. She is one of my dearest mentors to this day.
How old were you, do you think, when this concept of like, because I was raised in, I was a Catholic kid, but my stepside of the family, who when we were kids, we didn't distinguish, but I always just try to make it clear as an adult. So I was an Irish kid. Hello, Karen Kenney. But my stepside of my family were Italian and Portuguese. So my nana, we talked about this the other day, they did the Malukis, they did the evil eye ceremonies. Like, I learned about blessing, how to keep the evil spirits from coming in through the doors and the windows, like all these things. Tarot card readers, superstition. Like, I grew up knowing about, like, of course, God, the Holy Trinity, Holy Spirit, all that stuff. But then I had this other experience of being exposed, right, to these other ways of being. So that was just normal. It was just normal to me. And sometimes I think people are like they think I don't know, like, how do I say this? Like, I'll say the crystals and stuff are great, but that's not the only thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't stop there. And I think that they take that as me going, if you look behind me, you can see I got plenty of stuff. I love them too. I grew up with them. But I just think that there's more there. So how old were you when so you're having this thing like, oh my God, what is it? Dirt, da, 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 da. So like, what age are you when this starts to kind of happen? Because obviously now we're at the tipping point that really leads to the work that like you do now. So talk about, because this is a big moment. This is my meeting Marianne Williamson moment, kind of, right? Yeah.
It was the second appointment, I think. I was still in high school. It was the second appointment with Amy. Maybe it was a couple. Maybe we had done a couple. And I remember sitting in her office, and it was filled with crystals and healing music and a fountain and a diffuser.
Of course there was a fountain.
Lots of plants. Yeah. You're always going to have that fountain in the background. My office is really missing one right now. But I remember just sitting there, and I remember her asking me, and she has the sweetest voice. She said, do you believe in angels? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm Catholic, so yeah. I mean, I hope that they're there. She's like, well, Archangel Michael and Mother Mary and Jesus are all here with us together. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was really, really digging this. I was really like starting to heal, and like I could feel the shifts happening. And now we're coming in with this. It was just, but at the same time, I was like, she's a really lovely lady.
Yeah.
I don't think she would, I'm not getting the vibes of, cult-like or harm or anything there.
There's no Jesus enemies coming your way, right?
No. And I just remember like, don't make a face. And I just like looked around the room, and I was like, okay. And she's like, what do you feel from that? And I was like, well, to tell you the truth, I don't really know, because I can't see them. I can't feel them. I can't touch them. Like, I don't know where they are. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that you would lie to me. This is probably your experience, but it's not mine. So I can't believe it until I see it.
Yes.
And then cue Jesus. With the
Jesus,
total
take the wheel.
spiritual experience.
Yeah,
Jesus took that wheel. He will forever, both of us, is a guide and a teacher and one, like, my go-to with Archangel
Yeah,
Michael.
I'm laughing right now because what people can't see, I call it my Jesus wall, right?
Yeah.
like right, literally above my computer where I am right now, there are 5 different pictures of Jesus, and they're all, in all except one, he's with little sheep. Like, I wish I could flip, I could actually pull back, but it's like, so yeah, like, and to be really clear, like, I always want to say to people, people experience, because this is like a little shout out to our homeboy Jesus, right? Because I think people experience Jesus in so many different ways, and I think Jesus gets a bad rap because when I said that jokingly, like the Jesus enema, I think he gets crammed down people's throat as children, and so they kind of get turned off when they hear it later in life, whether they're teenagers and 20s or whatever, and they're just like, oh, and people automatically assume that if you say Jesus, that you are you're evangelizing, or that you are a wicked hardcore Christian, or whatever the thing is. And I'm always like, Jesus to me is like a free agent, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no one religion owns this. And even if you don't consider yourself wicked religious or spiritual, you can think Jesus as kind of like the main character in a lot of great teaching stories. He's taught, like, I mean, to me, he's just an ambassador of love.
He's the ultimate healer.
Exactly. So I just wanted to kind of, because sometimes people hear Jesus and kind of like how you were experiencing when you were younger, and how I felt it when people have come at me hard with the Bible thumpers, right? I'm just like, you can feel yourself just kind of shut down and la, 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 block your ears. So those who can't see me but can hear me, I'm like blocking my ears, like, no, don't want to hear it, right? So I just want to say, keep your hearts and minds open to this concept of Jesus that Meg's about to share with us, and her big, like, huge Jesus, and like he comes in, because it's not like, I just always want to say, like, can we just let Jesus out of the box? Can we just not try to put him in some little box of how we talk about him? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
100%. And I think that it's what happens a lot of the time, like, at least in my experience, is that Jesus was a teacher of love. He was a healer. He was teaching love and compassion, and a lot of people will use his name to then say words of fear or condemnation or that judgment, fear, and those are not his words. That wasn't his teaching.
That's a human interpretation and manipulation of love.
Exactly. And as humans, we know love as conditional. We don't know it as unconditional. That is what we're here to learn, I believe.
Amen.
Or remember, rather, because we already know it on a soul level. But so I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I went somewhere. I don't know where I went. But I felt, and every time I talk about it, it's like I've never had the same experience again in the same, like, intensity. But when I talk about it, it's like I can feel it in my throat again. This. Do
you feel emotional when you talk about it sometimes?
Yeah, because it saved me. That experience saved me. Yeah. And so, you know, in the full circle moment, and I'll come back to that, of what's going on, of wondering, like, oh my gosh, what happens when everybody's your world is literally falling apart. You have no control.
Yes.
And then to witness, like, oh my gosh, this is what lies on the other side, quote unquote, but always with us. Like, this is what's real.
Yes.
And it felt totally, I just felt like my whole body just filled up with love. Mm-hmm. And every fear, every doubt, every worry, every thought of lack, just completely evaporated. It wasn't even, I tried to, like, pull a thought, and it just wasn't even there. And I just heard his words, like, you are loved, you are safe, you are loved, all is well. Like, trust me, trust me. And I did. Every fiber of my being, I trusted, and I knew it. It wasn't even like, oh, I hope that experience was. It was like, that was probably one of the most real experiences of my entire life.
Well, so, right. So when A Course in Miracles says, like, only love is real,
Yes.
it's so hard to believe that when we're in this construct of, again, call it the illusion. In some traditions, they call it the Maya, the dream.
Right.
It's so hard in this very like body centric identified experience, this world, right? So, you know, as Marianne, you know, often says, like Marianne Williamson often says, like, love is what you are, it's what you're born with, and fear is what we learn here, right?
Yeah.
So it can be really hard to like kind of accept that only love is real. It's like, so when you're talking about that, right? I'm not telling you what your experience was, but the way that I interpret that is in that moment you have what I would call the memory of God's love.
Yes.
Which
totally.
you have never actually left, but spiritually like we have this amnesia here in this world, thinking we have to now, and then the religions tell us, well, if you just do steps 1 through 10, just follow these commandments, and maybe you get back in. Maybe you get to go home, right? Maybe. So I just think that imagery of your whole body being filled with love, the experience of lightness, that to me is that enlightenment, right? To get enlightened, to be filled with the light that you are the light of the world. Like, I just feel like, yes, in those moments, like, it's so beautiful because I've experienced it. And I can't say, and I want to hear more about like how long it lasted, like whatever. But for some people, I know some people who have been, just like when they say the first time somebody gets high, they're chasing that experience like again and again and again and again. And for a lot of people, they say, I haven't felt it that same way, like ever again. But like, what a gift to have had that experience this is what was so powerful too about what you said. All fear, which is like all ego thoughts, all ego constructs in it for a moment just dropped, and it was like the veil dropped, and it was like, oh,
and you know, I didn't. The other thing too is I've asked, you know, can I have that experience again? You know, and they always just say, you don't need it. You already have it. You already have it. You have it forever. So. I left that. I literally can't even tell you how long I was in, like, that's what I mean. Like, I left my body. I left I just remember coming to and Amy just asking, would you like some water? And I was like, just like nodding with my eyes like off somewhere. I think I paid her. I'm not sure. I know I did, but I don't remember. I remember like walking down the stairs. I remember getting into my car. And I remember just completely sobbing, just totally, totally sobbing. Because for the first time in my entire life, I felt, and maybe not my entire life, because I think as children, we're really tapped in and connected to that. But I just knew that everything was going to be okay. And I called my mother and I just said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this gift of this woman. Like, thank you for helping me find this. And that was the turning point for me of there's something else out there. And I want to know what that is. And I want to learn how to cultivate that connection. And I want to learn how to help other people do that. Now, granted, I started learning different modalities right out of high school.
Yes.
But that was not the path. At that moment, I was not like spiritual teacher healer. Like, that was not the path. I was, I was a musical theater major. So I was like thinking
jazz hands. You were like Jesus in jazz hands, right?
So I was really like, it was kind of like off to the side for me. Like, I was learning it, and I wanted to study it because I wanted to understand it, but I also wanted to just have a tool I could offer my family and my friends. I wasn't even thinking about other people. I was just wanting to learn more myself and have something that I could offer to the people that I loved. But my trajectory was like film and creating dance and music and things like that. That was my trajectory. And then I moved out to Los Angeles and I realized, oh yeah, I don't want to be in this industry. And I had already been learning all these modalities. So something in me just went, okay, well, let's try this. Let's walk this path and see what happens. And then it just...
Well, I think what's so fascinating, and I want to touch on this because you and I, we often say like, we're on the same field and we have we do the same, it's like we do the same work, but we do it a little bit differently. Right. So,
yeah.
So I think it's really, really fascinating. So I'll call it spiritual team. You'll say your angel team or your angel guides.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I would say samesies different, like different samesies. Yeah. But so as you're talking and you're saying, you know, when you called your, and this is just, I always say, like, I'm always, while you're talking, I'm listening to you, but if a word impression or a thought impression or instructions come through, I'm like, all right, talk about this. Because I think it's fascinating when you said, and I called my mom and I was like, thank you for helping me to find this. And I often think to myself, I started laughing. And when you said that, what I heard in my voice is what I heard in my mind is we'll use anything. Like we'll use whatever we can. And I think to me, when you're thanking your mom, because at that age and at that time, that's the connection you made. Like, this is the person that delivered me to this. But I would venture to say, and again, you get to disagree with me or whatever. I would venture to say that's that divine timing in the spiritual team or angel team, like on the job saying, like, so you were saying thank you to your mom, but it's also like, hey guys, thank you for bringing me to one of my human angels who can help me. Like I always say, Holy Spirit will do whatever it's got to take, right? It will do what it needs to do to help guide you. So I just think that, like, even that, like the odds of you, like when I sometimes think about how huge the world is, the fact that we can find our teachers is so amazing to me. And I just think there has to be a certain amount of willingness, but also, like, I have so much gratitude for my spiritual team for never abandoning me, for putting up with my shenanigans and my stupidity, like my blocks, my blogs. But I think a part of it had to be that you were willing. Some part of you probably said, and again, I don't know I don't want to speak for you, but like I remember for myself when a return to love, because I mean, books saved me. You say dance saved you, right? Yeah. Books saved me, right? And so I know that I had hit a point in my suffering where I was like, I was just done banging my head up against the wall. Like I just knew I was out. I was out of solutions. I was out of systems and tricks and trying to I was just like, I don't know what to do. And in that moment of surrender, call it that, of being willing and saying, I just need help. And it was like, oh, now we can get through that thing. Like, you know, dawn breaks over Marblehead. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And I always say you walk the path out of desperation or curiosity. But, you know, for me, it was that place of surrender. Like, I will literally do anything I can to not feel this anymore, and to feel, and to like be okay. Yes. Really, like, I just wanted to feel grounded and centered and have some tools. Like, that was really just like it, like anything to just move through life. And I, you know, God bless my mother, who is very intuitive. She's starting to really own that now.
Patty.
Patty. Yeah, Patty.
But it's funny that both our moms' names were Patty.
I know. So special.
I know. Anyway, sorry, mom shout out. Sorry, go ahead.
But also to that, you know, she, despite her, you know, she lived a very practical life. She's a dental hygienist. Like she was a hardworking woman. But she also lived on a Native American reservation for a little while. Like, she has all these other like elements of her. So she was in a sewing class, and some woman was talking about this teacher, Amy Batchelor, for anybody who wants to know her. She's amazing. But she was heard about it in a sewing class, and her intuition flared to go, oh, would Meg be interested in that? And I said, literally, I don't care. Yes, let's try it. Like, I'm at that point.
Yes.
And so that was our team always finds a way, always finds a messenger delivery system of some sort to get us where we need to go.
To deliver the goods,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
getting me, the fact that we laugh about this, I'm like 18 years, how much older? I'm almost 20 years older than you, I think, right? You're
5.
Yeah. So I'm going to be 52 soon, right? So I'm like, there's like an age difference there. But we both grew up. Your mom worked in Lawrence. I lived in Lawrence. We both moved out to LA. We both lived in the Oakwoods on Baham Boulevard in LA. Like, we laughed so hard about that. It's like so funny. We're both married to creative people.
Yep.
Actor for you and musician for me. Artist, whatever. And then like we both, like, here we are, we find ourselves doing spiritual work in New Hampshire. Like, what the fuck? I don't even know. But here we are. And it's so amazing. But one of the things I just want to circle back to, because I know for you and I, one of the things that really matters, and look, I always do this disclaimer, like, look, there are people who could show up from my past and be like, oh yeah, integrity and honesty is so important to you. Look, I've forgiven the earlier versions of myself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I understand that a lot of my life was just like surviving. And one of my earliest mentors was a guy that was like, look out for number one, kid. Do what you got to do, right? Like, so yeah, I stole shit when I was a kid. Like, there are things that like I did, and I look back and I go, God bless it, I'm even still alive, right? That I came out intact in some way. So I always say this with the awareness that there might be people in the world who had a different experience of me before. However, this concept of honesty and integrity, I think as adults is like really, really important to us, especially in this work that we do. And you said something that I thought was really interesting, is that, like, you were saying at a particular point, I knew, first of all, you needed these modalities, these tools, to put in your, as I call it, the spiritual toolkit, right? To put in your toolkit. You wanted these things. And then eventually it became, I want to be able to share and use these with families, members, or people I love, or whatever. But you weren't, I wanted to see how this lands for you. And maybe I'm just the asshole that has this experience, but I've seen it with a lot of people, male and female, who have huge followings. They'll make a statement like, when I was 8, or when I was 5, or when I was 3, like, I always knew, like, you knew that you loved to dance and to express, and you understood when you were a little kid, not consciously, but, oh, when I do something and Auntie so-and-so laughs, I like that. But you couldn't have broken it down at that level, right? So when I hear people making these claims, like, and I think this is one of the dangers of giving away our power and putting people on pedestals and looking at them and just believing, like, just chugging the Kool-Aid of other people, of gurus and teachers. When they start saying, oh, I knew at 5 years old, I wanted to be this. I knew at 6, like, there's this one story, and I'm not going to name who it is because I'm going to be professional and nice, but it's a dude. And he was telling this story about how when he was like, I want to say around 8 years old, neighborhood bully kids, like, pissed in like a Pepsi can or something and made him drink it. And while he was drinking it, he says, in my head, I was like, one day I'm going to have all this money and all this stuff, and I'm going to make, and I'm like, dude, there's no way when you're drinking somebody else's warm piss, you're planning your empirical comeback. Like, do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
100%.
For me, it's one of those things, like, people are like, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? And I'm like, I knew that I always loved books. I knew that I loved because books contain stories. And stories helped me to visit other places. Like, worlds that I could never visit as a poor kid from Florence or whatever. I loved how stories made me feel, that sometimes I could read a story and I felt so seen, like, oh, there's a connection there. Like, they're showing me. Like, I'll never forget when I was a little kid. You might not have had them, but there used to be these books that your parents could order. And they were just like generic little stories, but they would put in your name. And if you had a dog, it would put in the dog's name and like where you lived. And I'd be like, oh, it's a book about me. Like, I just knew I had my own book, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like, ever. Right? And you're laughing too. Like, it was just like on Romper Room when she would hold up the damn tennis racket thing and go, the mirror or whatever it was, and go, and I see Karen and Susie, I'd be like, she said Karen. Like, I would be so excited. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I want to acknowledge that I appreciate that you didn't come out and be like, I knew at 5 years old that I wanted to write books or dance speak on stage. I'm just like, why do we feel like we have to go back and make our little selves prophetic in some way, or like all-knowing in some way, to try and make our adult self feel like we're an expert or like, am I
adequate
sense right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for all of us, we can go back and we can see the things that we were our natural gifts and our passions and our desires. We can see them all laid out in different ways. And I think the journey is just connecting the dots,
yes,
collecting the wisdom, the experience. And, you know, I think it's the trouble I have, and you and I have talked about this, with a lot of coaching and the way coaching is done, is to just pick something and then to make a business around that thing, and to kind of box yourself in such a way that doesn't actually allow your creative genius to be expressed, or your intuition to really be the driving bus of that. And that is what happened to me. You know, it's like, here I have all of these modalities and I'm trying to figure out like what the expression of it is. And I have a bunch of coaches being like, this is what you do, and here you go. And like putting
Meg, nobody puts baby in the corner, right? Like trying to put Meg in a box. And I
am again in the box, right? In the container.
Like your childhood, like repeat trauma. Like, hey, let's just make Meg feel like Meg doesn't get to have a voice about what she really wants. And I think the reason why I'm bringing all this up is not to, you know, maybe I'm being a dick, I don't know, but not to be a dick, but to basically point out, I think that exactly what you're saying, those things that we were drawn to when we were younger, the things that we knew that we loved, that to me is your intuition speaking through.
Right.
You. That is your inner teacher connecting, helping you, because you're too stupid. I'm like, your brain doesn't even like fully form till you're like 25 or something. So your younger self is being shown these little clues.
And you're open to it at that point. Like you're just open and receptive because you haven't learned to shut that down or off yet.
Or to follow other people's authority over your own.
Right.
So when you're young, you just know what you like. It's like peas. It's like, no. Or like they put something in front of you and you're like, no. You're very clear about what you like, what you don't like. And with little kids, were you ever that kid who, because people never believe me that I'm like, have a lot of introversion, but I was a wicked shy kid. And when, you know, there might be that one relative or whoever, or many relatives where you did not like hiding behind your parents' legs, like not wanting to go kiss them or be close to them. Oh, yeah. Whatever your little spidey senses were telling you, or you were just wicked shy, whatever. And they would make you. Yeah. So at a very young age, we are taught not to trust our own agency and authority and intuition. Do you think that that's true for you?
Yeah. And I think that we, you know, we're at the mercy of our caretakers.
Amen.
And we're trusting that they have our best interests at heart, and maybe they do on one level and aren't open and aware to the things that are going on. Maybe they are open and aware of the things that are going on, but they're in denial about it because of their own stuff. Whatever it is, we're basically, we come into this world and we're taught like, these are the people that are going to guide you through life. You must listen to them, trust them. And we do, because we have no other choice not to, otherwise we don't survive.
Well, and I think that's one of the greatest things about when I talk to people about, you know, in the work, you know, we both do this work, but I'll just speak for myself. When I make the distinction, it's because I only want to speak for myself and not make assumptions about you. Yeah. But for me, in the work that I do, I try to remind people, like, one of the greatest gifts about being older now, like being adults now, is we get to decide what we want to do with those things. Like when your power was taken away as a child, like now we get to decide, how do I want to revise that? I always say your life is a story. Edit often, write well, and edit often, right?
Yes.
So it's like, how do I want to revise? Like to revise really means to revision, to see again, to see anew. And how do I want to see these old stories? So much of my process as a spiritual mentor has to do with writing, and like meaning the language is all like kind of tied together. So for me, it's like a revision of what had happened. And I think what you were talking about all these different things that happened to you as a kid, all the feelings that you felt, all the experiences that you had, and then it's like crystals and angels. And I know you have in the past, for me anyways, I don't know if you still do them, but angel card readings and all these modalities, right? The Reiki and spiritual, all these different things have kind of come together to form what is, I would say, kind of your, and I know you're many things, I'm not putting you in a box, but it's your own creation, which is divine feminine mastery. So do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that kind of came to be? And, you know, because I think what's interesting right now is that I'm seeing a lot of people. Oh boy, here I am being a dick again. But here's the thing: I just see a lot, and I just look, guys. I just report. I always
but you're not being a dick. You're just being honest about what is going on, and I appreciate that, and I know many others do. And it's not coming from a place of judgment ever when you're talking about it.
I just think it's kind of like how you felt as a kid, where it's like, guys, are we really going to ignore that all these people are sick and dying around us? Like, can we just have a conversation about it? And for me, I think in the spiritual world, I see a lot of it. I see a lot of spiritual bypassing. I see a lot of people, like even in the forgiveness process, where they just want to like bypass and get to this piece. And I'm like, you don't get to bypass the accountability piece.
Right.
I'm willing to forgive everybody. I'm willing to forgive you know, I'm always like, this being human is like being in the fucking forgiveness Olympics, and I am going for the gold. But it doesn't mean just because I forgive you that I want to still have lunch with you. Right? It's like there's these steps that a lot of times we like to skip. And one of the things that I see, to speak to exactly what you were just saying, is that people think that if you're being an adult and you got your eyes open and that you're being discerning, that you're being judgmental, and we're not supposed to judge each other. And I'm like, dudes, one of the things about spiritual maturity is that you take a good long look and you do get to discern, this is not for me. This doesn't feel right. I don't particularly like how that business is being run or that thing is going down. You get to discern. It doesn't mean that you're saying that person isn't a child of God and they're not lovable and they're evil, but you get to say, hey, that's kind of fucked up and I don't like that. You get to discern and still be spiritual. Right? You mean, I know you know what I'm talking about.
100%. Yeah. Well, and I think I do. And look, ultimately, anybody who does this work or is guiding people or coaching them or whatever, you have a responsibility.
Amen.
You have a responsibility.
Huge.
To do no harm, to show up to those sessions and into that relationship with no dependency of how that person should show up, so that it feeds your ego or so that it makes you happy, or you're there to be a guide. You're there to be a vessel of love for that person and hold space for that person. And no one can heal and truly be vulnerable and release if they are in a space of judgment. It's not going to happen. Well, and it only causes more trauma. And more trauma and more trauma. And my thing, like where I'm peace, love, and happiness, but don't fuck with people. That's when I go red.
You and I have had these, we've had a few of these conversations, you and I. So I'm more like, those of you who can't see me, I'm just almost doing like permanent double amen hands. And I'm kind of like asking these questions, already knowing on some level what you feel and think about them, but I want the rest of the world to kind of hear it, because you and I, you know, are really good friends and we talk about this stuff. And I think one of the things that we're seeing so much of that annoys me, and we're going to circle back, we're not forgetting about DFM, Divine Feminine Mastery. What kind of sparked this whole thing is, this is something, right? You guys, let me just say this. Unless Meg is on my show, you will never hear, or help in helping me in one of my group programs or bringing her in as a guest teacher. KK's probably not going to be teaching about feminine anything, right? Like, not that, and I don't say that negatively, but
Yeah.
I'm more of a student of that than I am somebody who can speak to it, because you guys know there's a lot of masculine energy here. And it doesn't mean that I don't have, Meg's always so kind to me, and she's like, but you do have a softness to you, right? But I get, so what I'm saying is, I don't go in a lane that's not my lane. Like, I don't try to, I'm not over there teaching on, not that I can't have a conversation about business and branding in particular, like whatever, but I always say, like, I know enough, I know what works for me, because I trust my intuition, but I probably know just enough to be dangerous. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of, is people who are in the coaching lane of either business or mindset, and they're now kind of trying to jump into the spiritual lane, and they're doing things in a way that, just like you said, it can be, they know just enough to be dangerous, and they can be really harmful. And saying things about that they know how to hold space and that they're intuitive. I'm like, I keep seeing all these people hanging a shingle. And I always say, just because you call yourself a thing doesn't make you the thing. But I see all these people like hanging these shingles saying, I'm an intuitive coach, I'm an intuitive this, I hold so much sacred space, sisterhood, all this stuff. So my point being is that Divine Feminine Mastery is something that you've been swimming in that pool for a long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of a sudden there'll be like a trend. Yeah. Or they'll be like, oh, well, I see so-and-so doing that. And they'll skim or steal from the, what they heard. And then they try to, Mr. Potato Head their own offering. And I'm like, but guys, you don't really know what you're doing. And it's not me. I always say God doesn't need me to police the universe. So I'm not like on their pages calling them out and but I see a lot of bullshit. Mm-hmm. PU, something stinks. Okay. Right. So when you came up with Divine Feminine Mastery, like tell us a little bit about, because I feel like when you were saying all these things that you were kind of these tools, it now has flown into this offering, this monthly membership program. And if I misspeak the description of it, correct me, please. Yeah. But where you create, like, because you know how to hold safe space.
Thank you. Well, I've worked on that for a long time. And again, it's like, I've been on this journey for 15 years. You've been on this journey for many, many, many years. And it's like, I think that the world that everybody just wants to get to the destination in a hurry. Everybody just wants to get to the thing to say that I'm the thing now. And when it comes to this kind of work, you really have to be responsible, because people are trusting you to guide them through their like deeply emotional experiences. And if you don't know how to hold them there, you're just basically re-traumatizing them. I mean, or really? you're creating a relationship where they've put trust in you, they've invested in you, you've promised them something, and then they realize they haven't gotten that, and then you've shamed them or guilted them about that. Like, do you understand that is like, you've done harm?
Amen.
And that person now has to work through their own process of can I trust people? Can I trust someone to guide me? Can someone hold me in that space, or am I on my own?
Well, yes. Yeah. No, I didn't mean, no, finish that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. And so that's where I get really, and I'm like you, I feel everything. We have our discussions, but I'm never going to say something publicly or out loud or in a post that I haven't checked myself first with, that
Yeah, like
I
what's
haven't
my
made sure that this
intention?
is coming from love. Like, it's not, because this isn't about like blame or shame or judge anybody. This is always about, is love speaking through me right now? And if it isn't, I don't say a word.
Well, let me,
out publicly. I
Yes.
can say it, I process it through.
I want to just, now I'm aware that, listeners, I'm aware that I am interrupting, but there's a purpose. There's a reason why I'm doing this. So let me also just say to those of you who are listening right now, you might hear Meg not breaking up, but like being a little staccato a couple of times because because I'm not experiencing that. You might be experiencing me that way on your end. But Zoom basically, so the whole world is on fucking line now. So there's a million new users to Zoom. So they're putting out, I knew when I started recording, it said, you might have some lag time in like whatever. So I don't think it's that bad, but every once in a while, there'll be a moment where you're saying something and then it like catches up. So I'm just letting people know we're aware of that. But you know,
me and the internet too is a thing.
Oh,
so.
yeah. So, well, you're blasting it with so much energy, Meg. So one of the things that I wanted to say is that I think people, all right, without me going down a rabbit hole on language and the word love, let me just try to find a really succinct way to say this. So everything has the meaning that we give it. And a lot of times when I talk about love, and that's why I always say it became very popular when A Course in Miracles started kind of infiltrating the consciousness in a greater way. I was like, if I hear one more yoga teacher say, choose love over fear, I was like, I'm just like going to punch myself in the face because they don't really know what they mean when they say that, or they don't really know what A Course in Miracles meant when that kind of became the thing. And we're not talking about human love when we say that, because human love is very, very persnickety. It is very finicky. It is very conditional and temporary. So there's a lot of misconstruedness, I don't even know if it's a word, around the word love. So I want to make a point. When you were just saying, I ask myself before I post it, before I do something, before it comes out of my mouth, like basically what you're saying, as I understand it, like what's my intention here? Like, why am I doing this? Why am I saying this? Am I being of service? Is it to be, and I always tell my writing people, you know, if something is hot for you, you either got to write it cold or you're not ready to write it yet. You cannot come from the wound. You have to wait until there's been some healing or a little scar tissue, right? Because then you're just out for revenge. Never write the story too soon, okay? So that's the question you're asking yourself. But you say, I'm saying it with love. Okay, but then somebody might read what you wrote and they're like, well, if you're calling whoever, an industry, a system, a person out on their behavior, how can that be loving? And I'm like, because I did all that to get to this one sentence, because sometimes love is fierce. Love is not Care Bears and little heart emojis and like,
love is the truth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So sometimes
so we can't be lying and denying it. You know, if
like sometimes the most loving thing you can say, I always say, is no.
Yeah.
I love you enough to say you are a pedophile and you've been hurting little kids, so you need to go to jail. You're still a child of God. We understand, right? We're not putting you there because you're an evil, like whatever. Some people would call that evil, whatever. But what I'm saying is the intention with which you do something is everything. So we can say no. We can say, give me back my key. We can say this relationship is over, but from a loving place. Is I being clear, I think, in what I'm trying to say?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Because anytime I say anything like that, it's like, I always see the people that I'm talking to as children of God. Like I know who they are, but who they are showing up to be and how they are acting out and how they are harming people consciously or unconsciously is not cool.
Amen.
And so that is where I feel my responsibility, going back to responsibility, if again, not to police people, but just to say to other people, hey, this is what an experience is supposed to be like when you're working with someone who's guiding you through an emotional experience or a spiritual experience. This is what it's not supposed to be like. And if you're experiencing that, that is not okay.
Well, amen, because that's one of the things when you're leading, and I'm just kind of repeating what you're saying because you and I have talked about this ad nauseum. about like coaching. Anytime you step into a leadership role, AKA a position of hierarchy or power, where one claims to be employer, employee, you know, teacher, student, coach, client, mentor, mentee, there's all of a sudden this thing where there is an opportunity for somebody to be manipulative and for somebody to be taken advantage of. And I'm not saying that people do it on purpose. I think some people are completely narcissistic and they convince themselves that they are an authority on a thing, or they call themselves a master or an expert or a guru or whatever the thing is. And one of the things that you and I always talk about is the danger when people give their power away. There's this exchange of, well, you have all this information, I'm going to give you money for it. So now there's an expectation. Like there's all these energy roles that are like happening at the same time. But the person who is in that moment, because we are all students and teachers of each other, let's be really clear. But whoever is playing that role in the moment, they have got to have deep integrity. Like they have got to understand the power in the position that they are in. And if they aren't in it to be helpful, if they don't know how to hold space, like I've seen so many business coaches, like, because this is, and let's talk about this for a second. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. I think that what we're seeing, there's a reason why, I can't speak for you, but there's a reason why I don't say I'm a life coach. I am a spiritual, because I am a spiritual mentor and I get trained to be a spiritual mentor, but I want the word spirit right in the title because I believe that that's the solution. I know that spirit is the solution to whatever is happening. Okay. So that's why I do that. And I think that what a lot of people in the coaching world, in the business world, in the brand, all the different ways, right? Entrepreneurial, let's just say that world, what they're finding is they can have all the fucking strategies and systems and whatever they want. But if people aren't dealing with their shit, if their internal game is not happening, their external game, they will not take action. They will not implement. They won't be happy with your services because they'll still be stuck. So I think a lot of coaches and stuff like that, and again, you can disagree with me and interrupt me at any time. I think what they're recognizing is shit. I'm delivering strategy, but we're bumping up against, they need spiritual help.
Right.
And they don't want to farm that out. Like they don't want to call in a Meg or a KK or whatever. And so they try to take on that role themselves when on some level they have no business doing that. Absolutely. And that's not to make you and I special. It just happens that in this lifetime, who knows, in another lifetime, maybe I'll be friggin' a juggler in a circus. Well, I would never be in a circus. Well, hopefully I'll never be in a circus because of poor animals. But you know what I'm saying? Like in this lifetime, this is my assignment. So I just find that you have to be honest enough with yourself to know what your skill set is, what your ability to hold safe and sacred spaces, because I've seen a lot of coaches be able to take their people down into the darkness. And I know we've talked about this. There have been events where somebody opens up a journaling or a visualization experience and they take people into their trauma, but then they don't know how to take them out.
Oh,
I'm going to just shut up for a second and let you respond to all of that. So what do you think?
No, I 100% agree. And, you know, it's like this work isn't, it's not cool. It's not trendy. It's, right? You know, like this isn't a green juice. So that's where I get, you know, I just get very, protective over the work that we're doing and over the people that are just trying to better their lives and to heal so that they can live their purpose. They can live in joy. They can be better parents and children and siblings and partners. You know, there's a real desire for people to want to grow and evolve. And so when I see people who learned about something a weekend ago or a year ago and are now saying that they're an expert on it or hosting a workshop on it, or they've now created a course around it, it upsets me because they haven't gone through their own experience of that work enough. They haven't been the student of that enough.
Amen.
To then be able to teach it and to be able to hold and guide people there. I don't have a problem, and neither do you, outsourcing and saying, you know what, I'm not the teacher for you in this moment. KK's the teacher for you. Or, you know what, you're dealing with deep trauma in the tissue. You got to go to Marianne for that one. Like,
That's right.
I know where my boundary is of what I have the capacity to do for you and with you. And if I'm not the teacher for you, then I trust that, because I'm operating from a higher system, as are you. I'm not operating from ego, and I'm not operating from like, well, how many clients can I get?
Scarcity.
Yeah. This is not about that. It's sacred work. And so
Right.
I trust that if you're coming to me with something that I truly in my gut don't feel like I'm qualified to be able to do with you or for you or hold space with you, I'm certainly going to be honest with you about what my capacity is. And I'm also going to offer you other people that I think would be a better fit.
Amen.
Because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So we both work with a woman named Marianne C., who you
Yes.
introduced me to. And
Love her.
I'll never forget when I first, was reached out to her. I mean, she almost turned me away and said, like, I don't know if I can actually help you. And I thought, shit, that makes me want to work with her even more, because she's so in integrity, right? She's so in integrity. Yeah. And we kept communicating, and now and she did take me on as a client, and we've had an amazing experience. So I always say thank you, no matter how. I'll be saying thank you to the end of the time. So thank you for that. But I know that, well, so much of that is ego, right? So much of that is ego. And so even as a spiritual mentor, I have people that I refer to. So a lot of times when I'm working with a client, I don't think that I check, like, I'm not arrogant enough to think that I check all the boxes. So it's very, very common for my clients. I'll say to them, I think it's important that you're also like going to yoga. You know, like, I mean, I've been a yoga teacher for like 21 years. So that stuff, but I encourage them to have a therapist sometimes, not everybody, but I'll say, ooh, I think this is a place where you definitely want to do this. And then I'll sometimes say, hey, I think you should find a somatic therapist or somebody who can help you with acupuncture or whatever the thing is. I don't try to be the authority on all things, because I'm not. And just like you, and I don't feel like, this is what I always say. And it was one of the reasons, this is what's so fascinating too. Okay. So I was a yoga teacher. I had a yoga studio for 10 years. And I always used to say to people, I'm your teacher for as long as I'm your teacher. But when I would close down, like, let's say that I was going to Kripalu for a week, whatever, I was doing a course or a training or whatever I was doing, and the studio would be closed. This is like back in the day, because this was like 2003, before all the fancy internet-y stuff, right? And I would be like, hey, there's like 5 other studios in town, go to another class. And people would say to me, I can't believe you tell us to go to other studios. And I'm like, why? They're like, what if we went there and we liked it better? I go, well, then that's where you should be. Right. Like, if you go to another studio or another teacher and that fills your well, and you feel like in your gut, like your spiritual team is saying, go here now, go ahead. And so I would share like students with, and I share clients sometimes. I'm working with somebody and then they're working with one of my friends, or they know this one and they're doing this over here. And I'm like, amen, man. Because I know how many different resources I needed in my own healing.
Same.
Right. And so if we can just get the fucking ego out of the way for a hot minute and just say, I don't need to check all these boxes. And I want to circle back to something else you said. And then I want to hear more actually about your program, Divine Feminine Mastery, because I think it's going to resonate with some folks, is that, hold on. Hold on, you guys. Brain fart. You said something that really, rats. Anyways, if it's that important, it will come back to me. So tell us a little bit about Divine Feminine Mastery and what it kind of looks like, in case it resonates with somebody.
Yeah. So, I mean, when that started, that wasn't a program that I, put in a box. That was literally, and I know that this term gets used a lot in a lot of ways, but this was actually downloaded. Like I was not looking for I was not looking for anything. Can I
interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
So I was talking about this a little bit earlier, and I talked about it on a live I did today too, about the spiritual toolkit.
Yeah.
And I made fun of this whole thing, the divine download. And the reason why I make fun of it is because I think a lot of people are lying when they say it. And I don't even know if they're conscious. I'm not saying they're consciously lying. I think people like to think of ideas, ego ideas. Like they're out taking a walk and they have an ego idea, but they say it was a divine download. And I'm always like, whatever. But I was saying to people have asked me, KK, you talk about your spiritual team and you talk about listening, like prayer, I say sometimes is talking, meditation sometimes is listening. And they'll say, so like, do you actually hear a voice? And I'll say, well, I've only really have heard a voice in my head. Like it literally was like, I heard a voice in my head that did not belong to me, that as much as I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Give me stuff. But for me, it's more like, I call it like a word impression or a thought impression, where all of a sudden the words are there, like it's there, or the idea. I know the difference between an ego idea. I can feel the difference versus this is something that has been given to me, individual curriculum. So when you say it was a divine download or a download, can you just talk to us about how that you experience that in your body? Because I think so many people often ask me, KK, how do you know when it's ego talking versus your spirit talking?
Yeah.
And you distinctly usually know based on how you feel.
Yeah.
But so can you just talk about your experience?
So whenever I use that term, it first of all, it has an energy to it that I can feel behind it. And there's usually that part of me that's like, wait, what is this? Like I'm almost like a conversation, like, wait, what is this happening? Or like, you really want me to go there? Or like,
we're doing what? Wait, we're doing what?
What did you say? So it's like, it's almost like I'm having a conversation. It's not like I hear an ominous voice. It's still, it comes in so fast. So I don't even know if it's it may in my head sound like my voice, but it's not my voice. It has like a whole other energy to it. I can't really explain it, but it's something that comes in, and my system, it's like, it's a knowing and a feeling.
Yes.
Same time, which is for a lot of empaths, you have those two lit up really well. It's like you feel something, you know something.
I'm raising my hand to not be rude, to interrupt you.
Yes.
Do you, as a choreographer, as a dancer, do you receive inspiration for dance and art in the same way? Or is it more like, so I think of one more like, Marianne Williamson always talks about how like love is like an undeletable file that we can like download, right? That we can download into the body. But I think sometimes when I'm inspiring, like when I'm doing a podcast or even this right now, talking to you, or I'm doing a Facebook Live, I think of it more like, if we're going to use web terminology, almost like a live stream. Like it's happening and coming through at the same time. So with dance, I imagine it might be like that. So I'm just, again, I'm just wicked curious. So finish your thought about how the divine download happens. And then I'd like to hear in your creative process as a dancer, if it's the same thing.
Yeah. So it's almost like, it comes in almost as an instruction or as a word impression, like you said. So for this particular thing, I kept hearing these words repeated over and over and over again: presence, nourishment, pleasure, truth. And they would just like drop in, but they dropped in with all this weight. And I'm like, what am I doing with this? Okay. Yeah. You're telling me I need more of this. Notes. Like, I was just like, okay. Like, I thought if I wasn't even thinking, oh, this is a program. I was like, oh, they're okay. Yep. This is they're leading me through a healing process is what I thought they were doing with these words. And then as I started to live and embody the words that I was being given, I realized, holy shit, this is what we're missing right now. when we have moved, and then that word divine feminine came in. I'm like, divine feminine, that seemed like, and at the time when it came through, it seemed like super,
yeah, I know,
woo, I guess is the word, but it was just
Yes.
like, whoa, really? Like, I don't know. But I realized that these were, and what came through was like invitations. Like these were invitations to help us get back into a more feminine flow, to get out of this very masculine way of working and living and being that has burnt us out and basically detached us as a society, as a humanity, and we're trying to repair. So it's not that the feminine is like now taking charge, it's just that we're needing more of those invitations, which we're now getting these, we're now living these invitations. So how crazy, 2016 it was coming in, and now it's like, oh, okay, presence. Yeah, we got a lot of time on our hands to actually practice that. Nourishment. We're in a time when we really need to be not just taking our bodies for granted and pushing it to its extreme, but like, am I really caring for my well-being? Do I really actually know how to nourish myself? Or do the coping mechanisms that I've learned throughout my life actually do not serve me at this point?
Deplete me and wreck me and like all these other things.
Exactly.
Right?
Truth. Am I being really honest with myself about my life, about my behavior, about the choices I'm making, about the things that are important to me that I'm not giving time to? Like, am I being really honest with myself? And we're also seeing truth being exposed in a collective way. So all of these came in, and it is a creative process too, because it was just like I wrote them all down on a poster board, and I'm like, okay, so these are things I need to work on. And then it was just kind of, it's not like I get a whole blueprint of it, like, oh, and this is the formula and this is what it's going to be. It's just like, oh, wow, this is like, oh, we could play with this.
Well,
and that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I love that. And and again, I get so excited. And so I always apologize if I interrupt. But one of the things that, and I guess the reason why I'm interrupting is because sometimes like just happened 2 minutes ago, I'm like, I don't want to forget because I'm on this show, I'm trying to, especially if I have a guest, I'm trying to be helpful to the listeners. And so if you say something that like, and especially as a gateless writing teacher, one of the things that we do in our feedback, and our feedback is always to lift up and to never tear down. It is always about focusing on where the writing is hot and powerful and the energy is and what we love and what popped for us. So as you're talking, it's always like gateless feedback is kind of in the background. But what you said is, I received all these words, which I then realized were invitations, but you didn't say they were invitations to help everybody else. You said, I need to work on these things.
Yeah.
The first invitation was to you. Yeah.
And that's why I say we can't put anything out in the world that we have not been a student of.
Amen.
That's the thing about experience is.
Yes.
And through that, I realized, wow, that's where my disconnect is with that word. And like, because how can I teach presence if I am living on my phone and not here? And how do I have the authority to teach on that if I'm not practicing that? And I tell my clients all the time, like, I am as much a student of the very things that I'm teaching you.
Amen.
Because I would not be a good teacher if I wasn't.
But that's part of the that's part of the humility of like, and I always say to people like, because people love to say, I had to go first. Well, it really is like, when you're going first, you're not sitting there going, I went first or I'm going first. It's just like, you're in it. Like, you're just in it.
Yeah.
And then you come out the other side and you're like, holy Jesus. And so I often joke, you've heard me say this before, there's a couple of ways to look at it. It's like, after you come through the fire, you go back with buckets of water, for the people who are still burning, right?
Yeah.
But I say, I'm in the triage tent. Like, I finished the race. I've got like some bananas and some water in an aluminum, one of those shiny blankets. And I'm like going back and I'm helping the people that are coming across the line, like, holy moly, right? So that's the thing is, you cannot, I always say, how how can I understand your suffering, another person's suffering, if I haven't suffered myself? How can I give advice about having a daily spiritual practice if I mean, and here's the thing, I guess, like, I mean this jokingly, like, fuck us, because apparently you can do that, because there are plenty of people giving advice and telling you to do things that they are not practicing in their own daily life. And that's one of the things I think where the internet gets a little squirrely, is that you can be sold a bill of goods about how things appear.
Right.
Because this is the age, like, talk about, so you and I, you know, have talked about this in the past, because we're you and I are we're always talking just as friends, so it's not like whatever.
Yeah.
But now in this day and age when anybody can have a platform, like back in the day, you could have an opinion, but you only shared the opinion it used to be in person, right? Because there weren't text messages and Voxa and Facebook and Instagram. Like now everybody has a soapbox to stand on, or a platform, and they can. The performers, the pretenders, the narcissists, the friggin', you know, perfection, the people who are, you know, trying to sell you something can make things appear a very particular way.
Right. Right.
And if people don't use their intuition, and I think of all the work that you do, the thing as an intuitive, the thing that I love that you encourage, and it's also in my own way what I'm doing with my own people, where I always say, like, I'm not interested in creating codependent relationships.
No.
So much of being able to navigate this online world and deciding who you're going to be with, friends with, sleep with, buy products from, coach with, mentor with, what church you're going to go to, what authority you're going to listen to. Like Russell Brand was saying the other day about how it's so fascinating to look at the system of authority right now and how trusting we are. Like the government just says, stay in your house. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, we should, but I'm just saying right now we should, but they just say, like, go in your house. And then, like little sheep, we all just run into our houses, right? Because we trust, we've made a conscious choice that this is the authority that's going to keep us safe. And we're seeing that on a mass scale. And again, let me repeat, we should right now follow that advice. But what I'm saying is, in other interactions in life, especially with the internet and stuff like that, anybody can make it appear the way they want it to appear. And if we don't trust our own inner teacher, if you don't trust your own angel guide, spiritual team, Holy Spirit, intuition, gut instinct, whatever you want, higher self, higher knowing, divine intelligence, 1,000 words for it, that muscle, we have to make it stronger. So I just appreciate that within the DFM, you know, system and what you've created, the program, that you highly encourage people to trust themselves. And I'm like, you and I have talked about the word trust so much, right? And I always say it's one thing to say that you trust God. It's one thing to say it. Like A Course in Miracles has that great line that says, I want the peace of God. To say this means nothing. To mean it is everything.
Yeah.
And you're helping people to understand the meaning that they're feeling in their own body, the guidance that they're receiving from their own agency and authority and inner teacher. And I just appreciate that so much. I have never, and look, I'm a little like, you know, my bullshit meter gets, goes off about 1,500 times. No, that's an exaggeration, but it goes off a lot, right? You can't be on social media and me not be like, oh my God. But I have never felt, this is a pretty big thing, but I have never felt that you had an agenda, that you were like trying to, no, I mean, I really mean it. Like, I have always been like, yeah, Meg, just like, she's so loving. And it doesn't mean, and I think that's another thing. I think sometimes people who are loving, like, people like to put them in the sweet category, but trust me, people, Meg has plenty to say. She's not just all sugar and gumdrops. Okay. So I just feel like I appreciate your integrity so much, and I can tell, and we should probably wrap this up because it's like 2 hours and people are going to be like, do these broads ever shut up? But I just want to say, I appreciate your integrity.
Likewise.
I appreciate your integrity so much. It really is a beautiful thing. And I think the world right now more than ever, needs art, right? We need dancers and music and writers and the creatives to step forth. This is when we get busy. This is not our time. We were, as Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Dr. Clarissa, she says, we were made for these times. So the spiritual teachers, the light workers, the healers, the artists, the musicians, the creatives, the writers, we were made for these times.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you stepping forward. And because I know in your program, you do like lives and you do like healings and you do like these things. And there's just.
So I feel like DFM started on how, like, it was formed on like how to truly live. And I think now what the focus is how to truly serve.
Yes.
Because there are just so many incredible, beautiful light workers and healers and creatives out there that are truly very empathic and very grounded in just wanting to be of loving service. And so I just want to support them in how to do that energetically, emotionally, physically, mentally, like what that looks like, how to support themselves, and then how to just share their magic. Like I'm not teaching them how to do it. Like they innately know. I'm just connecting them back to what their gift is. And
you're seeing them, you're giving them a safe place.
Yeah.
And you're seeing them and you're acknowledging it, because here's the deal, you guys, right now. I think there's this concept, I think sometimes in spiritual traditions of like, well, there's one God and there's like one Jesus Christ and there's one Buddha and there's one, whatever, Saint Teresa, whatever the thing is. And it's like, but we all have to call upon the Jesus within right now, the God and goodness within right now, the divine goddess. I don't care what you call it. But we're all children of God, and there's a reason why it is said in different ways in all the traditions, the Bhagavad Gita, in yoga, in A Course in Miracles, in the Bible. All the traditions say some version of, you are the light of the world.
Yes.
You are the love that is. Like you are, I am. When it says I am, right? Be still and know that I am God. Like be still and know, be still. Be the thing that you were created to be, which is you are the light of the world. So we need everybody to be stepping into that power. So it's like you're helping people to acknowledge the divine aspects of themselves. And it's also, again, the work that I do, just we do it a little bit differently. And that's beautiful, because the people who resonate with you are going to resonate with you. And the people who resonate with me are going to resonate with me. There's no weirdness
there's no competition where we're going. You know what I mean? Like all of these things are going to fall away. The operating out of integrity is going to be seen. We're already seeing it. The curtains is going, like,
Wizard of Oz, man.
Back. It's going, yeah, exactly. It's going to continue. So this is a real opportunity for anybody who is operating from that place to get really right with themselves and to go, how do I want to? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I want to look back and know that I truly served from love, and that love was my legacy.
Me too.
And so what is my responsibility now?
Amen. So there's the writer named David Brooks, and I brought this up on my my little live that I did today. And the question that he asked, he wrote this article, and it's how I answered. Oh, let me see. Oh, here it is. This is the question that we're being asked right now, and I thought it was really powerful. So here are the questions that he asked, and I'll get to it. He said, he asked these questions. This is, again, David Brooks. He said, are you ready to die? If your lungs filled with fluid a week from Tuesday, would you be content with the life you lived? Do you know where your most trusted spiritual and relational resources lie? And then this one is the one that we're really talking about right now. What role do you play in this crisis? Like, how are you showing up? How have your choices so far led to your own version of this apocalyptic kind of moment, right? But really, here's the most powerful one that I loved, which you're basically speaking to. What is the specific way you are situated to serve? And so that's the question I've been asking myself. KK, like what right now? Not what some new thing do I want to create? What label do I like? What do I have within me right now? How am I particularly situated to serve?
Yeah.
And we gotta like, this is the time of like fearless moral inventory.
Yeah.
And I think that so much, like this is one of those times I think where so much, there's so much fear right now. And I'm going to do a whole podcast about this probably the week after this, talking about, everybody keeps saying like, I just want it to get back to normal. And I'm like, no, we don't.
Yeah. No,
we don't. We want a new normal, right? And we want to ask ourselves right now, not only what parts of this world that we're not, as you were saying, it's all shifting right now.
Right.
A lot will be revealed from this.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, personally, professionally, like we're going to start to, like the veil is very, 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 very thin. And the curtains are getting pulled back. So it's like, who do I want to be?
Right.
On the other side of this? What am I taking forth? And what am I finally going to own?
Yep.
Take responsibility for, apologize for, transition, transform, change. All of us are being asked these questions right now.
Right. And I think the thing is too, is our responsibility is always ourselves first.
Amen.
So that is what, like, I take a fierce moral inventory every day. Like, what am I doing that's contributing to love, and what am I doing that's contributing to fear?
Amen.
And what is my responsibility with that?
Well, I could just keep talking and talking and talking, but I think that's probably, is there any, oh, please answer the thing I wanted to say, because I was really curious about this, because dance is one of the things, like, and we've come to this place, and I hope I can openly discuss this, that I know that I think movement and dance is something I'm interested to see where we're going to be in a few months or a year from now, because I feel like it's all, I want to say this the right way. It's not like it hasn't been in your life, but I think it's going to start to play a more prominent role in your world. So I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm not asking for that answer, but when I was asking you, so when you're choreographing, because I've seen you dance, I saw you perform one time on stage. Is it just kind of like how, like I said, it's like live streaming, it's a download? Is it as you're, not necessarily as you're performing, because sometimes I imagine you're performing from the immediate, like, what do they call that? Improv, versus when you've choreographed and planned how something's going to go. But even as you're choreographing, is it like, what is that receiving process like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's always about the song. Like, it's a song I hear that inspires me, that like basically my whole body just has a physical reaction to, like and I can feel the like, it's almost like it opens the floodgates of emotion for me. And I usually tend to prefer lyrical or modern types of movement, because it is such an emotional, they are emotional forms of dance.
Kind of like contemporary, is that what people would call contemporary?
Yeah, lyrical contemporary. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not from the dancing world, that's why I have to ask these questions. Okay.
It used to be called lyrical, then it's contemporary. I mean, it's just, they're all the same, but well, modern and contemporary are not. But yeah, just, it's, for me, it's an exploration of feeling and emotion, and how that's expressed through the body. And with that particular performance that you saw, which I would say wasn't even really a dance, more just like a movement piece through. It was not.
Yeah, I felt like it was like, me too. Yeah,
it was, and part of that was in that moment, as I'm trying to choreograph it, very clearly, I was like, it's either going to be about choreography or it's going to be about grief. You can't do both.
Well, I think it was just a really honest expression of what was arriving in each moment.
Right.
Like that's what I was experiencing, is it's like, it's either going to be about making this, and when I say this, I hope you were making it perfect and pretty, like choreographed versus really honest. And not that choreographed things aren't honest, but am I making sense what I'm saying? Yeah.
And so with that, what happened was that was also like, your piece will be about grief. And I was like, really? Oh my God, of all the things, like, that's such a buzzkill. But it was also like I was being guided to move through that because I needed to move through that. Like, I feel like grief is like a co-assignment I've had throughout my lifetime, that it's just like something that keeps her, okay, here's another moment of that. But I went back to the moments of my life where I felt grief the most intensely, and what was I doing and where was I? And then I connected to like the movements from those moments. So there, like in the beginning, you know, there was a moment when my grandfather, I was told he was going to be passing away, and I was in the shower and I was cutting to release that pain, and then, you know, dropped to the shower and was rocking. It was like all those movements were real life movements and real life moments that I found a way to interpret in my body in a more artistic way, but you know,
I think
that was the process.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Me.
I love as a writer, and as like I live with the musicians, you know, you live with them. I'm so fascinated by people's creative processes. So that's why I was asking. For those of you at home, thank you for indulging me. Meg, this has just been so amazing. I'm wicked.
I love you so much.
Wicked happy to have you. Thank you. I mean, literally, we could. And you have a new wait, right? You're still doing your Are you going to be doing your podcast? Okay, I don't want to misspeak. So
it hasn't come out yet, but yes.
Meg will be just put it on the radar. Right? And want to tell them the name of it? Is it, or do you want to not tell them the name?
Intuitive Magic.
Yeah. Intuitive Magic coming to you live. Remember when they say coming soon to a theater near you. So just tell the beautiful people at home who have hung in this long. If you're still hearing the sound of our voice.
Yes. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you for hanging.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging, and tell them how to get in touch with you, how to reach you. And I'll put it on the thing too, but I just want them to hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly on Instagram, so just come hang out on Instagram.
Could you get some dashes? Tell them how to literally find you.
It's meg.m.haines, Haines, is the Instagram.
And what's your website?
It's just meghaines.com, so keep it really simple.
And is Divine Feminine Mastery taking, is it always open for enrollment, or is it like you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like a monthly membership. I don't get too technical with the terms, but it's open.
The doors are open and people are welcome.
And people are welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Is there any events or anything you have coming up that you want to share about that I was not aware enough to ask?
No. I mean, I just, you know, come find me on Instagram. Like, I love to meet people, connect with people, and I'm sure there's some collaborations ahead.
Yeah. I know, we're not even, it's like, and that's why it probably hasn't happened. Meaning like, we're not, I think we're just open to, we know that at some point we're going to do something. And I kind of think of us like, you know, we're like, it's not yin and yang. It's not that, but I think we're a really nice complement to each other. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, world. Just sit tight. We're gonna be coming up with something at some point, right? I don't know what it's gonna look like, but we love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate. I mean, especially during this time, you know, some people are finding that they are. You know, they're still working at home, but now with kids. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, I have so much time. That is not everybody's experience. So for those of you who have found the time to hang out with us, we really, really appreciate that. And as you guys, as I always tell you, right now is really an opportunity to practice and to put into applicable, pragmatic living all these principles that we talk about. Like, now is a really powerful time to start to do that. And the way that I end the show, and I always say to you, like, wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Like, I really mean that now more than ever, right? Now more than ever. So I see you guys and I feel you, and I celebrate you, and I appreciate you, and I love you so much. And I know, I mean, Meg, I'm just basically speaking for Meg, because I know her heart, and I know her spirit, and what these are for her. Yeah. So just wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye.
Thank you, KK.
You're welcome, honey. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support.
And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.